kill me for turning my back to everybody.
You can't help it.
So,
Lovely.
I was joking with the guys in back that I lose my Authors Guild credentials if I don't have a drink, every hour on the hour. They throw you out. Actually, I probably went too high. Sorry about that.
Well, why don't you take that one and slow down?
Okay.
There we go. That'll be great.
Wasn't even thinking. All right.
There we
So
go.
here we are. Let me turn off my phone.
Get to take a photo of this moment if you want to grab your phones. Give them a sec. I think that'd be fun. I made them put their phones away, but, here we go. I did. Fourth, Scot Harvath thriller. Yay. That's pretty to say that when I picked up Edge of Honor and recognized that Scott and Solvay had married and were you really going to do that to him again?
No. I didn't. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Yeah, no.
It's okay.
One was okay.
Just
I came to the end of Spy Master, and I had left it where everything was all wrapped up, everything was neat, and my editor said, I want more. I want something else. This needs one more thing. And that's when I had Harvath, Seemingly Bestseller Books.
I'm going to blame
my
her.
publisher and editor is the one who killed Harvath's first wife. That's not my fault. It was never my intention.
I love that. Pass the buck, right? Emily is a brilliant editor, actually. She's at her own imprint within the publishing company and famous for her marvelous roster of authors, such as you.
Yeah, she's lovely. And so she had Vince Flynn, Vince rap novels. So it's been a lot of fun. Tess Gerritsen was there. Jodi Picoult. I mean, there have been a lot of interesting people.
There have been a lot. Can I tell my Vince Flynn story
Sure,
again?
sure.
All right.
God
I
rest his
think of
soul.
it every time I'm sitting here. Do you see this line, or when you come up here, you will see a line on the floor where the floor changes color? So at one point, this was the back room of the Poison Pen. Now it's the building over there, but this was it. And he picked up a pile of books, and he knocked on the back door. So we let him in because he didn't look dangerous, maybe deranged, but not actually dangerous. And he said, hi, he said, I've written a book, and I'm hoping that if I leave you a couple of copies, that, you will read it and you like it. And I said, And he said, my name is Vince Flynn. And I said, anyway, I don't remember the rest of the conversation, but eventually he got in his car and drove away, leaving the books behind. And I still see him at moments like this. I look out there and I still see Vince.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, the last book tour he did over across the way, signing books together. And I thought about that. The journeys that authors make sometimes start in the most inauspicious ways.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
How did yours start?
Mine started on a train overseas. Actually, it started in a piazza in Italy. I was on honeymoon with my wife, and she asked me a question that if you're counseling anyone who's thinking about getting married, this is a good question to ask before you get married. So my wife looked at me, we're on our honeymoon, and she said, what would you regret on your deathbed? Never. I said, okay, when we get home, you need to start spending 2 hours a day, protected time, no phone, no internet, nothing, and start making that happen. And they're the host, chief cook, and bottle washer. And I used to make up names in the credit crawl so I didn't look like a small-time operation. I put friends from high school, characters from The Simpsons I'd put in there. And it was our very so for that show, one of my underwriters was Rail Europe Group, the people who sell the rail passes so that you can do the unlimited train travel. And they gave us as a wedding present rail passes, and they said, as many overnight train compartments as you want, courtesy of us. We'll pay for them. So we have a little Scottish in us, which means I would not cough up a buck if I was choking on it. So I thought, this is great. I'll save so much money overnighting in the trains instead of having to pay for hotels. And romantic. But our very last overnight train ride was from Munich to Amsterdam. And we had been at Oktoberfest. And I woke up that morning with an Oktoberfest-sized hangover. I was not in good shape, and I was dragging our bags at the train station, and it was the only train ride where we couldn't get a private sleeping compartment. We were going to have to share with someone we didn't know. And I was convinced it was going to be Atlanta, Georgia. They knew me from my TV show. They loved to travel. They loved my show. And I sat up talking about books. It's going to come back to Vince. I didn't even realize this. We talked about books all night. And she said, there's this book called Transfer of Power by this author, Vince Flynn. You should read it. You'll love it. And so she was the first one. When your honeymoon's over, are you going to go make some more TV shows? And I thought, okay, I'd already told my wife, the more people I tell I'm going to write a book, it'll really make it happen. And I said, well, actually, I'm going to write a book. And we went to exchange contact information. She gave me her business card. She was a sales rep for Simon & Schuster. And she said, if you write that book, and I could help you at Simon & Schuster. And she got me to Emily. And I have been with, in my 25th book, all of them have been with Emily. So I've been over 2 decades at Simon & Schuster.
So did I not say to you that luck plays an awful lot in the role? We were talking about that you can't write for events because there's such a time lag between writing a book and getting it published. Right. As many moving targets as there are.
This one, Edge of Honor?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the idea for Edge of Honor, I have a friend who had a very high-ranking government position, and he's super with foreign countries that we don't like as a nation, some bad places around the world, because he was so tough. And his time in a previous administration was over. And so I thought, gosh, so if you read, don't say it in the book, I don't say it till later, Harvath goes to kill the very last person on his list of people, and it's the guy who placed the bounty on his head, and his wife is, I don't even like him, but we have kids, please don't kill him. And what you don't know is the next thing she says is I know how to get to his money, and I'll split the Linda Evangelista, who said she would not get out of bed for anything less than $100,000. So now Harvath has a mountain of money sitting in a bank account, and Harvath doesn't have to get out of bed for anything. He doesn't have to go to work ever again. So I was thinking, what would get Harvath to agree to strap his gun back on again and jump out in front of bullets? And I thought, okay, this person, when I wrote Backlash, when Harvath gets kidnapped by the Russians, there was the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs. SPIHA is the acronym for it. And he worked very hard to help get Harvath back, say, okay, I'm going to make an exception, and I'll step in and help you until we can figure out if somebody really is after you, if somebody's really trying to kill you. There's 2 other. Harvath says, you know, you did me a big favor, and I'm gonna stay with you until we can figure out what's going on. So that's how I got the idea going for this book with Harvath, because I needed to solve for the supermodel problem.
Got it. But you also wanted to celebrate the 4th of July. You say that right up front, so it's not a spoiler.
Yes. So that was with Harvath's wife being Norwegian and never having been to the United States for the 4th of July. I wanted to set up that he was gonna show her the most incredible, best 4th of July ever. And as soon as they get back from their honeymoon, she's already got tickets to a really hot party that's happening about a week before the 4th of July. And he's like, oh, I'm never going to live this down if I can't create the best 4th of July for her. But he's not been in the White House in a while, so he can't get tickets to that. He can't get into any of the big, great 4th of July parties. And his wife has already scored tickets for an embassy party that's really cool. So, yeah, so in the back of his mind as everything's going in this book, he's like, how am I going to give my new wife just the perfect 4th of July experience?
So the other problem you have to work out is that Sylvie is on extended leave from Norwegian Intelligence Service. Mm-hmm. So not only do you have to get Harvath back in action, but what if you have to get Sylvie back in action?
Right, and that was something I didn't want her to just sit around waiting for Harvath to come home in this book. So I created some. It has been interesting. There have been a couple of issues that the Secret Service has had in different administrations. So it's not just one. They had a thing that happened at the U.S. Embassy in Ireland where the big, they call it the Beast, the president's limo came to drive out of the driveway, got to the top, and kind of high-centered right at the top of the driveway, and that's really bad. Like, your job should have been that you fill the car with as many people as going to be in there, and you drive the full route, including that stuff. So I thought, oh, okay, this is a cool, exciting storyline while Harvath's having one too. And I thought, all right, that's what we'll do, that the Norwegian ambassador's coming to D.C. for a NATO meeting and is concerned they can't possibly have, all their best people on one ambassador's team. And so she asked Solvi to help out, and then Solvi gets sucked into a whole faster. The only thing he has over her is more experience because he's been at the game longer than she has. But other than that, he thinks she's much better at everything than him. So I wanted to show her in action in this book too.
Well, I thought you created a really believable scenario. Now,
thank you.
We've been to India recently. I'm trying to think of all the various places, the Ukraine we've been.
Mm-hmm.
But Norway, sort of overlooked. But Norway, the Russians, are all working hard on not just Norway, but Svalbard and all.
Yep.
I have had the fun of not only sailing up the coast of Norway more than once, but going all the way around to Murmansk and Archangel. Back when you could actually do that, when I've been sailing for a long time, and so it was interesting to see the geography. But I had to check Brad in the book where there's a Russian guy being escorted out of Russia.
It wasn't Shadow of Doubt. It was. I actually think that was. I think it was Deadfall. The
Okay.
Ukraine one.
So the guy is crossing from Russia directly into Norway, and I thought, wait, where are Sweden and Finland? I said. So I got out my phone. You know, it's hard not to look at your map of Sweden and Finland, and directly has a border with Russia.
And it was one of the only borders to Europe that was left open after Russia invaded Ukraine. It was one of the few places that Russians could cross over because they go and use the big Norwegian grocery store there.
Right.
Because there's certain things that the Norwegians have.
So, they have this interface with Russia. They're up there on the Arctic Circle, and then we come down. They're around the North Sea. And it strategically is a really critical country, but I don't know that people think about it very often that way.
No, I had somebody really upset with me because I had the Chinese tied in. This is black ice. And the Chinese have been, they would love to find a different route to go because the U.S. Navy can choke them off at a bunch of different points if we want to. And it would really interrupt their shipping and their trade and everything. So if they can make a deal with the Russians to go up north over Russia. So I was talking about like a legit thing. The Navy did this whole big white paper on how the Arctic sea ice is melting sooner and staying melted longer, which is freeing up this passage for more of the year. And I had one guy say, "Damn you, Greenpeace climate people pushing your agenda." And I was like, no, it's not an agenda. When Will Ferrell lightened him up a little bit, but he was very upset that I talked about melting ice. I'm like, I take it up with the Navy, sir. They wrote their white paper on it. I just read it. So,
But it's even worse than that. Russia's actually pushing out to the 200-mile limit. They are extending it further and further.
So yeah, the Russians want to. There's as things are melting and being more available. There's a lot of mineral wealth and things like this. So the Russians took a submarine and had a little mechanical arm and planted a flag at the bottom of the seabed at the North Pole to try to claim it. Wow! I could plant a flag on the corner right here. It's not going to get me Barbara's bookstore. It's only all I'm going to get is
we'll see.
practice.
Yeah. Let's
planting
talk. Who knows? No, but I brought it up because if you had to pick somebody for Scott, Solveig,
Yeah,
and
she's
being
fun.
Norwegian and belonging to Norwegian intelligence is a really good choice. It's not obvious,
Yeah, and it was kind of fun for designed and does things time to time for the agency when they need them up in the north of Norway. It's really a cool area because even the NSA has got an operation that we're doing up there with the Norwegians, a big radar station that the Russians hate, and because they've got their northern fleet up there. It's a really neat part of the world, and I was stunned that nobody had been setting thrillers because what hooked me on Norway, load everything up at Fort Bragg and start shipping it over there. We've got a ton of stuff already in Norway, and they maintain it for us and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, wow, what a cool David Morrell, who's just a wonderful author who loves to introduce himself to people for the very first time as Rambo's daddy. Since he wrote Rambo, that's how he introduces himself. And he talks about if you're an author, you've got to have an idea that's going to power you through the next 12 months of writing. And he's a big believer in your idea because every time you do, you take a little bit of fuel out of the rocket and you risk not being able to make it to the landing pad. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody cares. It's just nobody's going to feel sorry for me that I get to write a book every year. It's my dream job. But it's hard because I'm the son of a United States Marine and a TWA flight attendant who brought us up in the Midwest and said, even if you are pushing a broom, you anything and you owe them everything. So I like to say that I don't work for Simon & Schuster. I work for all of you. You're my bosses. So I'm out here now, and this is my annual performance review, and I get to see my bosses and find out how I'm doing and that kind of a thing. So
that's true. Publication dates aren't precisely.
Yeah, that's the fun is that the book takes place in the run-up to the 4th of July. So you get the book tonight, and you will be reading almost in the same time frame, holiday and all that stuff. So it's, it was really important that I not screw anything up, that I get the manuscript in on time. And yeah.
That's right. Well, we won't go into that. Just think you guys get to read this where other unfortunate people can't maybe they can get one at, 12:01 a.m.? I don't know. Is there a midnight release party anywhere in the world?
No, the only thing you get at 12:01 is if it's an audio or an ebook.
Ah.
Those are technically available after the stroke
Right.
of midnight. So whenever I'm on like big news, I'm like, yeah, it comes out at midnight, like it's a Harry Potter book.
Well, that's becoming kind of a thing, but neither I nor my staff really want to stay up and do a midnight release party, so we tend to do them at noon, which takes a lot of the fun
Perfect.
out. But anyway, so you all get your book slightly early. You know, everyone now is the hero of their own story and has their own channel, and it used to
Yeah.
be, you know, that there would be some sort of secret, but any one of you could actually do that. So I always want to encourage people not to. Yeah.
Yeah, I did one interview and lovely, lovely thriller podcast. They had started out doing a whole season of podcasts. They'd gone through all Vince Flynn's books, all the Mitch Rapp books, and had done one episode for every book. And then they switched to the Scot Harvath books and did one episode for every book. And one of the gentlemen is a middle school teacher in the D.C. area. So he, when he happens at this really cool intersection in D.C. where you have the Papal Embassy, the Norwegian ambassador's residence, and then the U.S. Naval Observatory where the vice president's residence is. And this really sweet guy took the book and then spun around with his phone and did a video like standing in the intersection right there. It's really, really neat. And so it comes out, and I'll put a big warning over the front that you shouldn't listen to this podcast until you've read the book. So, and he's so sweet. He's going to take the book to different places. He's going to go to the scenes because it's all in D.C. So he said that was his goal this summer, to go to the spots and take pictures with the book. So if you come to my Facebook page, you'll see the stuff that he's done and everything. He's super, super nice guy. Very cool. Isn't that neat?
I like the idea
Yeah.
of him of action scene right at the beginning of the book, which totally sucks you in. Two things. One, how good are you at the actual physical stuff? And two, you can't really get away with making a mistake about guns. My experience is that if there's a single error on a gun by anybody who writes a book like this, they're toast. Everyone wants to
I
tell
agree.
you that you screwed it up.
Around firearms, with people that make firearms, that make their living with a firearm, whether that's the military or law enforcement. And nothing gets me to stop reading a book cold than like a mistake with a firearm. That up, or, I mean, my goodness, there are so many wonderful people you could reach out to if you're a author who's trying to build that sort of knowledge. You could reach out to your local police department and say, is there a public affairs officer I could talk to, or whatever. The NRA has all different kinds of firearms. You know that if you have a firearm and it's there to protect your life, you are not going to walk into a situation without a round in the chamber. And that's what I hate about Hollywood. It's just about when they're going to kick in the door, that's when everybody takes their weapon out and racks it and makes it hot and gets a round in the chamber. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You always have it's crazy. But that adds to the drama, I guess, they think in Hollywood. So yeah, you have to get the gun stuff right. And I will tell you, there is a very small set of people out there who love to play gotcha with authors. They love to think they busted you. And I've had people come after me and be like, they don't make that weapon in that caliber. And I say, actually, Smith & Wesson made 6 of them. 1 went to Prince Charles, 2 went to the Saudis, 1 went to Hong Kong, and the other ones were lost. And people...
Photography is important, too, and I'm trying to envision you, because you and I have Zoomed from your writer's studio on several occasions, so I can see it. I'm trying to envision you kind of doing, sort of a ballet with a gun.
And you did that. I've got a really good friend of mine who's a police officer who teaches a form of martial arts that the samurai invented, and it works the same with a sword in your hand and without a sword in your hand. So your movements are all the same, how you parry and all this stuff, and he's really good. So if I have to have, like, I don't want my wife to have to stand there, and me manhandle my wife. I ask him, I say, okay, listen, if I'm the bad guy and I've got a weapon and I do this, what would you do? And so I do have somebody that I can actually role play it out a little bit with if it needs to be done. Because for me, whether or not the readers would notice, I notice. And unless I know it can be done, I don't want to put it in the book.
And orchestrating it, choreographing is really the right word.
A good word.
But, you're very, but this, I thought the opening in this one was particularly good on that respect, with the choreography. Now y'all going to run home and at least read the first 2 chapters.
I had to look up how much a Chevy Tahoe weighs. because that was important because I talk about the Tahoe, Harvath's
There's
Tahoe
gonna be
being
some
lifted off the
auto
ground.
guy out there who
Yeah.
would nail you if you
Yeah,
got it
so I
wrong.
really, and I didn't just go to one source. I went to multiple sources and all that kind of stuff because I used to have a Tahoe. Now I got a Suburban, so it's a much bigger vehicle than what Harvath drives. It's a lot. It's long.
Ask you, would I actually know anything about any of this? No, except for the choreography. That part, I don't know about weapons, don't actually care. But choreography, I get, and I mean, lots of authors are visual. They, particularly some who've come from screenwriting, where they're kind of accustomed to that. Have you trained yourself to see scenes?
It's always been the way for me. When I'm writing, it plays out on the movie screen in my mind. It always looks like a movie, and so I am
Wait,
really
stop
thrilled.
with those magic words. Embroider upon our TV show.
So I can't say where the TV show is going to air because we have one final hurdle before they give us the green light. So the way this happens is they say, okay, love it, want to do it, but before we start writing checks, we want to make sure that you've really got this nailed down. So they want the first 2 scripts, and then they want a very detailed out. The Punisher series, which was on Netflix, and it's gone back to Disney now because it's part of the Marvel universe. He did adaptation of, I'm going to call it chick lit because I don't know what other genre to put it into, but Behind Her Eyes. And he did an adaptation for, I believe it was for Netflix, with Eve Hewson, who's Bono's daughter. She starred in it. My wife read the book and then watched the TV show, and she said it was just absolutely did a great job. So he's fantastic. So we're at the point now where we're trying to get the first 2 episodes, maybe even the first one. It may be that the first episode is so good that they know we've got it handled, but he's so good. He's been so successful, and they know he knows what he's doing. So it's just a matter of jumping over these first couple of creative hurdles. Because I said I'm going to be on book tour. Can I say it to be made? And we all want to make it together. So I don't get to jump the gun and say who it's with, but it is coming.
So you get 1 premiere tonight, but not 2. There we are. Mads Madsen.
What's
do you
that?
know?
We don't even get to start looking at actors until we know we patient scouting and we can start interviewing actors. So they'll probably throw like 5 or 6 actors that they think are good for Harvath. So it's going to be based on Lions of Lucerne. So we're going to go back to the very beginning of Harvath. We're going to show him kind of mid to late 20s age-wise. So now I'm asking my 22, almost 23-year-old daughter to help me pick actors. Because there's not a lot of male actors in that category who I know very well. So, but everybody's going to start throwing names in the ring, and we'll see what happens.
I love it. It's Lucerne. I don't know how much TV you watch for stuff like this, but the advent of drone photography has just made the most fabulous difference in locations. And Lucerne is gorgeous.
Yeah.
So, if nothing else,
It's gonna be incredible.
it'll be marvelous just, for all the views.
Yeah, it's gonna be terrific. And then those covered bridges in Lucerne and everything, it's just gonna be. I'm very excited. But that's the nice thing that we've got going for us too. For those of you who've read Lions of Lucerne, it all takes place in the wintertime, which means the clock is ticking. Whenever, because if we're going to go up, we'll probably do a certain amount in Canada. We're going to probably we'll go to Park City, Utah. But we need these places while it's cold, while it's snowing, and all that kind of stuff. And Europe too.
Snow machines are not really going to do it for you. No.
Nope.
No, that's very exciting.
it's pretty cool.
Right. So, do you get like producer credit too?
Yeah. So I'm an executive producer and I'm a writer on
What
it.
does that actually mean?
Book done in time that I can spend every single moment that this TV show is going with the TV people, because I want to learn this from soup to nuts. I want to know how the music people pick music, all that kind of stuff. So, but the executive producers are normally the people that were responsible for putting the deal together, assembling all the players, finding a home.
With authors 35 and a half years now, is that people, they don't really care that you wrote the book, and you don't have a big voice in the script.
You have to position yourself
Yeah,
for it.
you
have
may
to
be
show.
able to.
So, I'm fortunate in that they need a certain level of expertise to pull this off correctly. And books, first and foremost, and you have to make my readers happy. This isn't just, hey, we're going to just take the name of Scot Harvath and slap it on something. I said, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs that come along to get to Harvath throwing hands. How quick? Because the director's the John Wick director. He's got his whole fan base. They're coming. They want to see all that gun fu stuff like John Wick does. So like there's all these constituencies that have to be satisfied on this. So, but I've got a great team. They on the scripts. Steve Lightfoot is doing the writing. I get to read them, and then I get to say, hey, you know what? We could do this if you think maybe this might, whatever. But it's Steve Lightfoot. I don't want to take any of Steve's thunder.
Script.
He's amazing, and he's writing the scripts. I get to sit on the sidelines and shout encouragement. So, but that's good. But when we do change stuff, because Hollywood is going to change some things, what I said was, just make me part of the changes. Let me participate. Let's brainstorm so that I can go back to my readers and say, okay, we changed some stuff because we had to. We broke lines of Lucerne over 8 episodes. I had to go back and rewrite the book. That's me. I'm giving you that same Brad Thor experience. That's what was important for me, is that they didn't change it so much that it would feel foreign to you all. So that was really super important to me, and they're lovely. This whole group is like, we get it. Readers first. We got to make sure that we create an entertaining product, because there's going to be plenty of people that have never read the books, right, that are going to turn this on. We want them to love it, but we also want the readers, and I especially, because again, you're my bosses, so I want my bosses happy.
You have no idea how many people will watch it that have never read the books. It reminds me of my friend Craig Johnson. Any of you who watch Longmire or know anything about Longmire? So Craig went into a small library somewhere in Wyoming. He's pretty good about and very generous about sharing things. Or he went into a bar, I can't remember which it was, but anyway, he was wearing a Longmire hat. So he and he said, I write the Longmire books. And she looked at him and she said, there are books? So, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I know it does change everything. It really does. We could hardly give away a Colin, and I'm serious. They were, and so it is astonishing the audience that you can reach. I mean, you know,
You hope that you reach readers, that you reach new readers too, which would be fantastic. It's like a big commercial for your books.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go back to the book since we keep wandering away from it. So we have a great action scene. We have Scott and Solveig, who've had an extended and happy honeymoon, come to D.C. He wants to show her this great fort. She may be upstaging him already. A Norwegian ambassador, or was it the prime minister? Was it yeah, right.
She knows the book better than I do.
That's possibly because I just read it.
You just read it, and I wrote it a while ago.
It's okay. But anyway, the prime minister arrives, and then action kind of goes from there. So how hard was it for you to drive the whole thing so that you achieve your goal of resolution by the 4th of July? Because you have a fairly tight time frame.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. I think that adds to the tension and the excitement in a book. So one of the rules for writers, they say, is set a very tight timeline and then cut it in half at some point. But that is a long-standing rule for writers. You know, I love Elmore Leonard's two pieces of paid by the word.
Yes, unfortunately, it is certainly true that there are books that could have benefited from serious pruning.
Serious pruning. So I wanted to create 2 exciting storylines, one for Scott, one for Solveig. It was an interesting book in that it was all set here. There were no foreign bad guys. These were, you know, Americans, so you walk right past one of them on the street and not know this is one of the bad guys and all that kind of stuff. And the first review I got on the book was really excellent, because the guy said, this is a book for everybody. Brad so perfectly threads the needle. He'd like to read about a bad politician getting their comeuppance. So I was really trying to make sure that the book appealed to the most people possible. And that, again, that action starts right in that first chapter, which is important to me. And you light that fuse, and you let the thing take off from there. So it was a lot of fun writing it. And I got asked that question in the last couple of days, and I said, you know, it's my 25th book. If I can't, you know, I take my work seriously. I don't take myself. If I can't have fun when I'm doing it, what's the point, right? You know, as long as the readers, my bosses, are really happy and feel they got an A+ experience, then I've done my job. I liken what I do to having an amusement park, where every year, Yvonne, who works with me, says this. She's like, you've got an amusement park, and every year you build a new ride, and you invite everybody, come try this ride.
24 books about the same character. You branched out once with the Athena Project, And I'm assuming that next year will be a 25th Scot Harvath.
Yeah. I've
Okay.
got.
You'll be happy to know that, right, when you leave.
Yeah,
You
I don't
will
know what he's. I don't know how I'm
Right.
going to solve the supermodel problem next
No.
year.
But having achieved 25 Scot Harvaths and all, are you tempted to write anything that's not a Scot Harvath?
Yeah. So I've done 25 books overall, 24 Harvath, one Athena. Yeah, I would like to write some of that stuff. That's not how the publisher sets you up. They want you to be doing, your
The
series
same thing
character.
every year. The same thing but different is the mantra of publishing.
Right. So, and that's fine. Harvath's been very good to me. I love writing Harvath. I'm sure that
How long ago was the first James Bond movie? I was horrified to figure it out
it was
other
in the
day.
60s.
70 years ago.
Wow.
70 years ago. Wow.
Somebody say that Back to the Future. By the way, my cousin is Marty McFly's dad in that movie. Yeah, it's Crispin Glover. It's really funny, small world. I didn't grow up with him at all. I've met him like once. It's very funny. But somebody pointed out recently that the jump in with the DeLorean time machine went from 1985 to 1955. And so it's like us going back to 1985. And it seemed like such a huge gap when that movie came out. And now it's hard to believe that that's the same time now has passed.
Just you wait till you find that your whole life has become history. I have been recently a consultant on people writing about Vietnam, and I think, for them it's really history. For me, I graduated from Stanford and, there I was in the world. So, yeah, but you have to live long enough for that kind of thing to happen. How would you like to ask questions from the audience, unless there's something else that you would like to say about the book?
Well, I thank you for coming. That's number one. I should have started out with that. Thank you all for coming, braving the heat. So I do these challenge coins every year for my book. More if I get to a point where nobody can answer. So you have to raise your hand. I'll call on you. I'll call on the first hand I see going up, and then if you answer correctly, you win a coin.
Don't shout out the answer.
Don't shout out the answer. You got to be called on first, okay? So Harvath's mentor, who started the Carlton Group, had a nickname. What is it? Oh, yes, sir. That is what they call him, but that's not the nickname. Yes, sir. That's it. There you go. Congratulations. Wow. Peach, because he's a mean old man. That's right. He gave him such a sweet nickname. All right, I used to do stuff like what are the names of Nicholas's dogs and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore because, man, every hand in the room goes up. So try to figure, what's the name of the property where Harvath's house is? Yes, sir. Very good. Wow. It's good to get it. So it's funny. Sometimes people are really good. So all right. So we're two for two. The old man was a good one. I was looking for peaches though. A good crowd. Okay. What SEAL team did Scot Harvath start out at? Yes, man. I got to come with
really educated audience.
Yeah, I got to come with harder questions next time. Congratulations. You're welcome. All right. So we're gonna turn it over to just regular questions, Q&A?
Wait, there is a lady with her hand up
Yes.
who has a request.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a segue about all the authors you were talking about.
Okay.
Please list some of your favorite authors again. I noticed that some of your books have your favorite author, and
Oh.
here learn about new authors.
Yeah, that's how I pay off a lot of my poker debts. Is I will, sometimes you'll see a Steve Barry reference in my books. Steve cheats at cards, but I haven't been able to prove it, so I get to work off some of my debt by mentioning him. The classics are the ones that I grew up on. I used to take my parents' books as they'd finish them. I was probably reading people like Le Carré and stuff like that way too early. But I'm a big Le Carré fan. I even love reading like the nonfiction stuff about Le Carré. Now that he's dead and his wife's dead, a lot of stuff that was embargoed is out now. He's not a good husband, I will say that. And he would run his affairs like his spy operations. It's it's rather tawdry, but it's very interesting,
So do you
juicy
know
stuff.
that his son is writing as Nick Harkaway? We have a new book by John Le Carré. But anyway, so
Wow.
He's writing, and I'm not sure where the Harkaway comes from. I should know that, but I can't remember. But anyway, he is John le Carré's son.
So I've always been a fan of Freddie Forsyth and John le Carré, and Freddie's gone now. He just passed a couple of weeks ago, I think. And so, I mean, sometimes when I find new people, I'll put them in the books. I read a lot of first-time stuff because people ask me for a blurb for their debut novels. So I read people that the books aren't out yet, things like that. And I got a whole list at my office, and I wish I could remember some of those names.
Pong.
Oh, Pung Shepherd is she's a fabulous thriller author. I think she's terrific. Yeah, it's a good one. So that's just a handful of the people. I'm looking forward to one day getting like a super long vacation. I've got so many books stacked up in my office because I end up reading a lot of stuff for research. So it's rare that I get enough time to get through more than one or two books, fiction.
You know, I'd feel sorry for you, but in the 3.5 weeks, where they're in stacks
At your
on the
house.
floor in my office, I try to sort them out by month.
Wow.
But publishing this week alone, tomorrow, there are 1,997 new books publishing tomorrow. So the question for you and the question for me is how almost 36 years ago, it was going to be like, you know, I was going to sit over there on Main Street across from Ali. The garlic would float across the street when they started cooking. I was going to do coffee marketing, smell marketing, but the garlic kind of wiped that part out. And, you know, and I was just going to read when the occasional customer came in and so forth. And I thought that would be good enough. And now my whole job is to stay home and read all day long, except when I
amazing.
get to come down here and talk to Brad. Like, for example, you know, I read Edge of Honor,
Yeah,
right?
because
know.
you reached
And-
out to me
And
afterwards.
if you tried to find out what Edge of Honor was, if you looked it up on any online thing, you didn't find out anything much, did you? Because the blurb was really generic. But when I wrote to you, I told you, you know, what was going on.
What was that? Oh my goodness! Thank you. I'm honored. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Anyway, I digressed. So,
Wow. Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
so you're a tastemaker as well as an author.
I'm glad to be. That's terrific.
It is terrific.
It is.
So,
And that's the key. I know I'm competing against people doing this on their phones and streaming and all that kind of stuff. Not every. It takes a lot of discipline to read a book. I look at even my kids who were great readers at a certain point and then kind of drifted away and have now come back, which makes me feel really good. Like when I say, send me a picture of you standing in your living room, and I'll widen it out, you know, because they're away at college and stuff, and I'll look to see how many books aren't textbooks and things like that. So, and it's good. I just caught my daughter sent me. She just moved into her new place for school, and she sent a picture of the shelving unit she had built. There's some Brad Thor books on the shelves there, so I was happy to see that she's promoting for the family. But she had a Michael Crichton book on her coffee table because she wanted to. She had never read Jurassic Park, and she wanted to read it. So she had more than one book because I liked the fact that Michael Crichton could jump from hero to hero to hero, and I could come up with a different backstory every time. It'd be completely fresh for me. And then the publisher said, well, how many one-offs do you read versus series? And I'm like, I read a lot of series that were set in South America. Didn't really excite me. She said, but you read them anyway because you wanted to take an adventure with that character again, didn't you? And I'm like, yep. And she said, so what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to go back and write Scot Harvath for book number 2.
Emily's a tough
Yeah.
act.
She
really
is. She's tough.
More questions.
The other? Yes, sir.
So I first just want to say I'm really excited that the books are being adapted for film. I'm really excited about that. Being that you've written so many books, is there one that you've written?
Of them were an intense labor of love to devote a year of your life to writing something and bringing all the things together. I will tell you, one of the ones that I was most nervous about professionally was Backlash. When Harvath gets captured by the Russians and they're flying him to their own version of a black site and the plane goes down in the Siberia, basically. And I was really worried because Harvath's alone for a good chunk of that book. There's no dialogue. There's nobody for him to talk to except his inner. And I thank you. Well, any book I write, I don't know if it's good until I start getting feedback. I have to complete the book. There isn't anything that says, well, if you've gotten this percentage of the solution correct by this point, there's nothing. So you don't know. It's a big leap of faith as an artist. That one was an incredible fan favorite, that book. So all of kind of the agita that I had writing that book, it paid off. It showed me that I was on the right track. But that was probably one of the toughest ones. And I love it because it was tough. They're all tough, but I love them all. To the gentleman with the hat right there. It's so funny. I just asked for it. I just asked for it. I got the pilot script, and I read the pilot script, and I sent a text back to Steve, our writer, and I said, this is fantastic. You've really done a great job, but you're missing two key critical elements. And he texts me back. He's like, what two? He's like, I'm sure. He's like, what the hell did I miss? I've read all the books. I've talked to you 1,000 times. And I said, well, number one, there's no funk music reference in here. And that's Harvath's favorite music. And he's like, all right, what's number two? And I said, well, if that ugly son of a bitch Stephen King can be in each one of his adaptations. So yeah, you get the real inside baseball at a Brad Thor signing event. Yes, ma'am. I do not fly. I have flown in an F-16, helicopter, stuff like that, but no. I was starting to study to get a helicopter pilot's license before we moved to Nashville, and then the guys that I was working with that had helicopters up in Illinois, it was just, it would have been a big deal to go back and forth. So I do not fly. Yes.
So I fly.
Oh, great.
1,500 hours in fighter aircraft in the Air Force.
Oh.
Never flown a perfect sortie. So my question to you is, what do you think your biggest mistake was? You've got all the accolades, you've got all the awards, you're one of the top thriller writers out there.
Admitting to the mistake. So anytime somebody plays gotcha with me, I have the article already teed up. I know exactly where to find the link, and I can send them. Firearms experience I had in my house was pheasant hunting in the Midwest with my dad. So that's shotguns. So there wasn't pistols, anything like that. And I parroted language that I had seen in other books. Instead of saying magazine, I said clip, and I talked about the smell of cordite in the air, stuff that I thought sounded really cool. And so those things, if you get an early version of Lions of Lucerne, those things are still in there, and people still stumble across an early version of the book, and then they jump on Facebook and want to play gotcha, and then I can send them to this firearms magazine where I did a whole article about how it was very kind firearms owners that reached out to me after reading Lions of Lucerne and said, loved it, you got a couple of mistakes in there, you need someone to help better, and I developed from there. So that's probably the biggest factual error, is that I was talking about something as if I knew it. I wanted to have that kind of swagger and that confidence. I wanted the book to resonate with that, even though I didn't know all that stuff. So I didn't put a safety on a Glock. I knew at least that much, but I did make other mistakes. And so I think the title for the magazine article was "Press, Don't Squeeze," because that's what you do. You don't squeeze the trigger; you press the trigger, and that was the kind of the headline for that. So that would be probably the biggest thing that jumps.
You don't have the same prolific output as Seymour Roberts. So I've read them all. I'm waiting for the new one. We're going to start on that tonight. Appreciate that. But I, in either the second or third Jack Carr book, he references, I had the right eye, sort of group, right?
Interesting. I didn't know that.
And thinking Carlton group, but
Yeah.
Scot Harvath is referenced in there
Right.
as well. What kind of relationship do you guys have?
So said, hey, there's this Navy SEAL. He's getting out. He's working on a book. Would you talk to him? And so I'm like, okay. And Jack Carr's his pen name. He said, here's his real name. Blah 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 blah. I don't repeat it because it's just Jack Carr. So it's all over the internet. But whatever. It's guy, super nice, very personable, and I said, okay, well, listen, when you finish the manuscript, let me know, and if I can help you, it's like almost word for word with that lovely woman on the view out when you're done. And I said to Jack Carr, I said, listen, here's the deal. I said, I can open a door for you, but after that, it's up to you. Your work's got to stand on its own, and he's an excellent writer. And I introduced him to my editor. And so he's published with her as well. She published him, and she's like, yeah. I said, great, just don't put us out in the same week. It's the only thing I'm going to ask. And so that's the relation. Know about the Gary Lawler thing?
That was one, and then any possibility that you guys might get together.
No. No, because we'd have to split the money. So that's number one. You think about it, you're going to put in the same amount of work and effort into writing a book with somebody else for half the take. So you will never say never, right? That's the Sean Connery thing. So there's no plan to do that. We haven't talked about doing anything like that. And that wouldn't be a relationship I think I would want to do unless we both were.
The third book of his, and I'm like, man, this is it's the same world. It's
Oh.
the special operator guys and all that. There's so much overlap.
It would be how much work goes into a novel that to actually, do a 50-50 with someone. I don't know. To be honest with you, I haven't even thought of it. And so my wife always says, if the answer's not yes, it's no. But I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. Anything's possible.
People are making multiverses. I'm like, this would
Yeah.
Now, one more question. Sorry.
Okay.
Do you have any connection to Michael Collins?
No.
Because if you look at all of his books and the work he did with all the TV show adaptations, to me, that's the guy that you should come to.
Yeah, I've sat, when I was at Thriller Fest 2 years ago, I sat on a panel with Michael. Super lovely guy. Really, really nice. And yeah, he knows you.
So let me just mention, I mentioned it before, that Michael, who did his first ever book signing here and has signed everything he has ever written here, will be here on October 23rd, which is a Thursday, with the new book. And we do have signed copies of Nightshade. But I don't see that there's a huge crossover here between, Michael's a wonderful writer, and he's done great with television, but it's not the same universe.
No, but just to learn about how the TV game works and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So as somebody
Yeah,
who
but
understands the ins and outs of television,
I
he'd
understand,
be
but
good.
you need to listen to your own people.
Oh
not
yeah, no,
Michael's
I've got
people.
great folks, and if I ever need somebody, I can call Harlan, which is really nice. Yes, sir.
SEAL Team 3 and 7, all that. And one thing I found interesting in Jack Carr as a fiction writer with his military background, I heard he was inventoried or he had to report his manuscript to the DoD before publish it. And the new Jack Carr books have redactions in them, and I've never seen that in a fiction.
Yeah, I thought that was very clever to do. I thought it was very clever to publish it as it was, approved, and the things.
And he says you can figure it out if you study it.
Right.
The last couple of books are full of redactions. It's like black on every other page.
That's fascinating. Yeah, the people at the CIA have to do that too. I guess if you've had a top secret clearance, it's got to go through a review board and that kind of stuff. No, this is if you think about it, kind of post the global war on terror, we've had a lot of former operators come into the fiction space to become writers, new careers, and God bless them. I mean, that's terrific. They come out with this wealth of knowledge, and if they can spin it into a good story, I've read some fabulous.
How you evolved as an author.
Okay.
Process different from like writing that first book to what you do now.
My style has changed a little bit. If you look at the length of chapters in Lions of Lucerne to where I am now, I've gotten shorter, and that's I think I've just evolved as entertainment has evolved, and I've wanted to get people in and out of chapters quicker. And sometimes I'll do 3 short chapters, same point of view, same character. It'll be 3 about Harvath, bing, 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 as opposed to in the old days I might have made that just one big chapter, and it's just kind of a natural change, an evolution that I've gone through. So that's probably the biggest thing. Putting the books together, coming up with the ideas. People always say, where do you get your ideas? And I say, about it, because you can drive yourself crazy if you think too hard. 2 more. So you've had your hand up for a bunch, and then we'll come here to you, sir. So go ahead. This is it is par for the course. It is par for the course. If you have any success as an author, you'll have options done in Hollywood. And so, we had Ronda Rousey, who was the big MMA person, and Ronda was going to be involved, and got one screenplay written we didn't like, got a second one that was really good, and then I think there was a big executive shakeup at the studio, and I likened it to when a new lion joins the pride on the savannah and kills all the cubs from being a dead cat at a place like Thriller Fest and not clock like dozens of writers that had it. Because essentially what they do is they option, which is renting with the option to buy. So because we've got to get over those final creative hurdles, and so we can get going. But yes, you're very well informed. Yeah, there was a No, it never. No, it never got. They had 2 screenplays. The second one was fantastic. Whatever reason, the studio decided they were going to pivot away from doing those kinds of movies, and they were going to put their money into something else. And then the option ran out. And my thing is I'm not going to extend with you if I'm not. If these projects are not important enough that they're right on the front burner with you, I'm going to go find somebody else. After we're going to announce, but Sony is our partner in this, and so they've got the Athena project. So we'll see what happens. It could, because it's like owning the Marvel universe. That's what I told them. I said, you guys could do a spin-off about the Troll. You could do the Athena project. I mean, there's a bunch of things that they could do because they own that basket of rights. Because once they've got Harvath, they've got everything in that Harvath universe. So that's another thing, like when you talk about writing with Jack Carr, if it was the only way I could see that happening is potentially creating new characters, because then that's new IP that I can go out and sell in Hollywood. So every Harvath book I make belongs to Sony at this point. I can never sell a Harvath book outside of Sony. So that's kind of just the legality of how this works. Or else, if you could sell each book individually, you'd have 1,000 different actors all playing Scot Harvath. You know, there'd be 10 Harvath movies with 10 different Harvaths. Yes, sir. It's a great question. So with how quickly things are changing, how do I think my characters will deal with it? I did a couple books ago, Deadfall, where Harvath, I'd always wanted to do a Saving Private Ryan, that kind of a thing, a World War II style thriller for Harvath. And so the war in Ukraine gave me the ability to put Harvath in a war in Europe. And the funny thing is that the recurring joke in that book, that was the big thing. And javelins at the time when I was setting up that book, they were huge because they were defeating the Russian armor very successfully. So the way, I don't want it to be too easy for Harvath. So that's the other thing. It's how do I do this and give them a little bit of an advantage, but not too much, because so much in hand. So, but yeah, it would be boring if Harvath sat at Creech Air Force Base, just running the joystick all day long, and that was becoming more and more difficult to be a covert operator as the technology develops and evolves.
That's true of all of us. I just went to Thriller Fest, and I used my United Airlines app, and it wanted my location, right? Part of the deal to use the app. So I'm sitting at the Morgan Library in New York thinking I should go back to the Hilton to catch my ride, and my app went buzz, and it said, "You haven't left for the airport yet." I'm serious. I was like,
wild.
whoa. I mean, think about that.
Well, you have to be careful.
When it said that.
I just bought a bunch of new audio video equipment from a company called DJI. They make drones and all this kind of stuff, and they've got a really cool app. So if you're making videos and things like that, it's called the Mimo app. And then I just went on Reddit and I saw all these people like, all that's going right to the Chinese. Every single piece of information is going to the Chinese. It's all in. Now I don't know if that's true. That's a bunch of Reddit that kind of stuff. Is anytime you let a app like that into your phone, there's
if you're TSA pre-approved, they just look at your face, smile at the camera, and that's it.
Yeah.
They claim that they delete it when it's over, but I'm deeply suspicious. But anyway, you really can't travel without a phone at this point.
That's
It's very odd. So we've come to that moment. First of all, let's thank Brad for coming.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
That's a really awesome achievement. 20 said that we were going to give away a copy of Fade East, if he's called Fade, right?
Yeah,
Isn't his
Fayed.
name Fayed? Right.
Fayed, yeah.
And he's been, it's a sort of resurrection for him. But I do think that Kyle has some really amazing things to say about the direction the world is going
Super
globally,
smart guy.
not specifically in this country, but all over. And he's very wary of the role of oligarchs and a hero being true, but still, right. Anyway, pick a number. I'm trying to remember. Jen, do you remember how many numbers there were? It's like, okay, would you pick a number between 1 and 36?
And I will say this real quick. I'm going to be on the Today Show day after tomorrow, at the very end, the last half hour, and that book is one of the summer books that I am recommending on the Today Show.
So Kyle will be here with Don Bentley on July 29th. It's not a ticketed event; you can just show up. But I think it'd be, and if you're a Vince Flynn fan, if you're a Vince Flynn fan, it would be your opportunity to talk to the two people who've been writing Vince since Vince died. Why am I
Kyle and
having
Don.
trouble pronouncing Flynn? This is terrible.
I'm glad I took
Anyway.
the larger glass of wine.
No kidding. So what
All
number
right,
did
27.
you pick? Yay! All right. Previously mentioned, what we'd like you to do is fold up your chair. Please do not use that wall because the chairs will slide right off it and knock your feet out from under you. Over, and you can take a photo. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming.